On this week's episode, you can watch. In our new retro games reviews, we play the incredible Pitfall 2 remake for the Amstrad CPC by 21 Blokes, followed by the amazing Deathflood, Curse of Oak Island for Commodore 64 by Windigo Productions. In our hardware review, we have a special edition for you as per request of some of our friends. We run a hardware comparison between Commodore 64, the Commodore 64 MAXI by Retro Games, and a couple of famous Commodore 64 emulators to try to reach a conclusion as to which one offers the best experience and value for money. In our DOS Vault, we enjoy the addictive 99 Things by 4am Programming, a devilishly smart puzzle game. In our Retrospect review, we bring back to light a forgotten FPS gem in the face of Wrath of Earth. In our Retro Adventures, we play the hilarious and immensely entertaining The Inanimate Mr.Coatrack by Powerhoof, and we look back to the spooky world of the often overlooked Shadow of the Comet by Infogrames. Finally, in our history lesson, we do the math and tell you the story behind Atari's final fight in the console wars with the secret weapon that was the Jaguar. We hope you're as excited as we are. Let's go! We begin our new retro games review with an amazing remake of a classic arcade game for the Amstrad CPC. This is Pitfall 2 Remake by 21 Blokes. You play, of course, as Pitfall Harry on a new adventure to acquire treasures and defy all odds against poisonous snakes, spiders, swamps, and, of course, pitfalls. There's not much to say about this classic game. It is one of the platform game's pioneers, and it's still, after all these years, a joy to play, but also a challenge to complete. The game has been transferred to the CPC excellently with big, colorful graphics and wonderful animations. Its screen is drawn beautifully, with great use of the system's vibrant palette. The music and sound effects are also of a great level, and the controls won't give you any trouble. This should be textbook on how to remake a game using a newer system strength whilst respecting the original. On to the rankings, and the graphics get a 9.2. The controls, a 9. The music and sound effects, a 9.3. And the gameplay, a well-earned 9.4. For a total of 9.2. A great remake that will bring you joyful memories of retro adventures. Our next game is Deathflood, Curse of Oak Island for Commodore 64 by Windigo Productions. This is an action platform adventure game that will put your skills of the genre to the test. You play as a new recruit of a pirate crew, and after a mutiny, you're trapped in a flooded cave facing the evil crew members and various dangerous creatures, not to mention the natural traps of the caves. The game uses an interesting system for jumping that takes a little while to get used to, but once that happens, it really lifts the gameplay to a new level. You jump always in the direction you're facing, so all you have to do is calculate carefully the distance from the edge. It's a smart and convenient system that differentiates the gameplay from other games. The graphics are very well animated, and the colors fit the mood and the era represented in the game. There is a variety of villains and hazards to overcome, and the way the game works, we would dare say it gives its room a sense of puzzle too. The music is action-filled and incredibly composed, and it even sounds muted when your character moves underwater. The sound effects are also of a high standard. This is an addictive game that will keep you busy for quite some time, and the difficulty is just right without leaning too much on easy or hard. The rankings are as follows. Graphics 9.2, Controls 9.4, Music and sound effects 9.5, Gameplay 9.4, for a total of 9.4. A pirate adventure platformer that will provide you with many hours of great entertainment. Alright, this week we have something different. Now, I've been sent a few messages asking whether a normal machine, a retro computer, like Commodore 64 or an emulator, or even one of the so-called minis, are better to play your retro games. So, I've decided that I'm going to pull a review, a hardware comparison review, on all these platforms. Of course, we're going to start with the easy one, the Commodore 64 Mini, but actually it's the MAXI, the full working keyboard, full-sized one. We're going to proceed to a Commodore 64C with a Kung Fu Flash, so as to bring it in par with a MAXI one. And then we're going to run some of the most popular homebrew games, some we have reviewed in our channel already, on an emulator. We're going to run the same games as to be fair contest. And in the end, we'll read some conclusions and see who wins this all-out fight. Now let's get to it. We begin with MAXI, and it is a simple system to connect. It comes with games, but you can always put some extra through a USB flash drive, as we did. It has the USB and joystick connection ports, and of course the on-off button. It connects through an HDMI signal to your monitor or TV for a sharper image. And, well, let's go see it in action. Now this is the main menu of the Commodore 64 MAXI with pre-installed games. And let's see quickly some of the other options. Let's go here. No, sorry, the joystick is a bit awkward to use. These are the pre-installed games. Now, you've got a signal type menu. Here you can choose a Commodore 64 PAL, NTSC, or the VIC-20 output signals depending on the model you want to emulate. You've also got a menu design choice, carousel or classic, booting up on basic. You can now choose the USB icon to load an external game, And let's begin with Atlantis, an amazing game we have already reviewed. Now, I've noticed that the colors seem a little washed out, but other than that it has a sharp image and quick loading. The controls with the included joystick are not bad, but the whole thing with the colors is a bit noticeable, at least to my eye. I don't know how you see it. Now, let's check out the next game, Musketeer, another amazing indie retro game. Now you will notice it loads relatively fast. Now in this game, the colors look, I think, a bit better. See? Yeah, they look a bit better here. Now, let's check finally a classic game, and what better choice than Impossible Mission. And in this game it looks to me like the colors are really washed out for some reason, even though the image is really sharp again. It might be my idea, but this is the impression I have. The picture quality, though, is excellent. Let's go compare it to the original 64. Now, it might be redundant for most of you, but let's mention connections even so. You can easily get an RCA cable for your Commodore 64. You can also get, and I definitely recommend it, a flash card like Kung Fu Flash 64 here. And you can use a classic old joystick or some modern choice. It's easy to buy either one. Also, make sure you get a modern safer PSU. It's almost mandatory. Let's go see the games comparisons now. We begin with Atlantis again. And of course the flash cartridge makes it easy and fast to load any game. Now the game of course begins with no problems. The image is not as sharp as the Commodore 64 MAXI's, but the colors look better and true to Commodore 64. The image quality, of course, is because of the RCA cable, but still it's a pretty good image, better than the antenna, of course. Now, let's check out the Musketeer again. Okay. Again, you will notice at the Musketeer, let's pick it here. Okay. Loading is fast. Kung Fu Flash cartridge is one of the best on the market. Better color, but far worse image quality here. Maybe because the game has a bit more detailed graphics, it looks a bit terrible. But the colors are really good. Of course, you can get an HDMI converter, but it's still inferior to MAXI's image. Even then. So let's check out our classic now. Impossible Mission. And no surprises here either. Running smoothly, well, with pretty much the same results. The colors are as they should be, but the image is not as sharp, of course, as it was with an HDMI. And I have tested it with an HDMI converter. Even then, MAXI's image is a bit better. Lastly, let's move on to the emulators. We'll run Atlantis on Vice 64. Alright, we use the warp function, very useful on the emulators. colors are more vibrant and I think way better image than both other cases. It's a really sharp image. The colors, at least to me, look more correct, and the palette really comes to life. It looks the best it could. So I think that the emulators win this round concerning the image quality. Of course, it's a modernized one. Okay, let's see Musketeer. Alright, and sharper, more vibrant. Again, the graphics are really crystal clear here. It was terrible before with the RCA cable on the original Commodore 64. Yes, I think that's the best quality. I must say and notice that the modern controllers like an Xbox Series X are the best controller method yet and the most responsive. So let's see Impossible Mission, as we did with the other two platforms, and well, great results again. Sharp image. Let's try Atlantis on the Cloando's Commodore 64 Forever 2. You just click the ROM file and off you go. The warp function on the emulators is a breeze. Again, vibrant colors, very sharp image, as one would expect. Indeed, I think this, concerning the image quality, is the best of both worlds, but is it retro? Well, I'm not so sure. Now, obviously, the Commodore 64 MAXI is a very convenient way to play your games, your retro games, the new ones or the classic collection. The joystick is not the best of choices, but you can always use a different USB joystick. They work just fine, most of them. The Commodore 64, on the other hand, does need, if you want to play it in a convenient way, the Kung Fu Flash or an equal in functionalities cartridge. Also, you're going to need a very good joystick of the old times or one of the modern solutions. Now, the emulator is obviously the easiest choice of the three. It works perfectly, especially if you use an emulator like Vice or Cloando's Commodore 64 Forever, which has it all included. But the thing is, what kind of retro fan you are, that's what it comes down to. If you really want to relive your childhood or live it for the first time, experience what your parents experienced, if you were of a younger age, you will need to use an actual Commodore 64. It has the most hassle, yes, it's the most difficult to set up, but this is the authentic experience. This is how we felt when we played these games for the first time, when we were amazed and impressed back in our days, and it's still a pretty great experience. There are modern cables nowadays to help you connect them to modern TV sets. There are scan dabblers, there are many devices that will make the experience as modern as usual, including the flash cartridges that you can find everywhere nowadays. The Commodore 64 MAXI, on the other hand, is the middle solution. I don't know if I can justify the cost for an FPGA creation. This is actually hardware emulation, but it's still a sort of an emulator. It does have the advantage, the specific computer, that it comes with a fully moving, working keyboard. But still, this is an emulator on a hardware level. It's going to give you convenience, but it's not going to provide you with that original feeling. Of course, the emulator is the last and the budget solution. Anyone can play with an emulator in today's systems. It's easy to do so. Today's computers are very powerful, and you're not going to have any problem running and emulating the system, especially like Commodore, which was an 8-bit earlier system. But I don't know if you can see any difference between the visual and sound part than playing any other pixel art game of nowadays. So, in conclusion, if you can find an original Commodore 64, that's the way to go. If you combine it with a Kung Fu Flash cartridge or any other equal, and a good joystick of the old days or a modern solution, let's say like the Gamepad 64 that we presented a few episodes back, then you're in for a treat. And it's so easy to set up and so convenient, and you're going to have the original experience. If you have money to spend and you don't care about the hustle of having a system like this set up in your living room, because this is mostly based in a console experience, and you really don't care about the original feeling that much, but you do want a Commodore, quote-unquote, in your living room, then of course the MAXI is a very good solution. The joystick has been improved from previous iterations. It's not perfect. I still suggest you buy a different gamepad. Finally, if you're on a low budget or you just want a quick fix of retro gaming, the emulator is the way to go. But for us, this is the most suggested solution. It stands in the middle of the balance cost, experience, and easy to set up. So, this is our first hardware comparison review. More to come in the future. And let's move on to our next section, and thank you for watching. Let's begin our review of DOSVolt's treasures with 99 Things, an amazing tricky puzzle game by 4AM Programming. 99 Things is one of those games that when someone describes its concept to you, you're like, big whoop. That is until you play it for your own and realize not only that it is addictive, tricky and smart, but also that it's been like 3 hours since you've said, I'll give it a go for 2 minutes just to check it out. The premise is simple. The game will display which icon requires of you to click on a board full of various icons, and you must click on every single one of its kind in order to eliminate them off the board. Simple, right? Well, not so much. As you can see from the video, the game has pretty much the difficulty of Where's Waldo? If Waldo multiplied times 4, 8 or even 15, and was hidden amongst various other Waldo lookalikes. You can add a timer for added difficulty, and if you're sure you've got this, then you can try your hand on up to 4 boards of icons at the same time, searching for the requested icon on all 4 of them simultaneously. You can play the game with a mouse or a keyboard, but to be honest, the former is way better and faster. The graphics are well drawn, and they come from the classic CGA or EGA era, depending on your choice. there is no music to speak of, but there are sound effects that, even though they're not anything special, they offer a specific function to the game. But what really matters here is the gameplay, and that is amazing. On to the rankings, and the graphics receive a 7. The controls a 9.3. The music and sound effects a 5. And the gameplay a whopping 9.8. For a total of 7.7. This game is proof that all you need is good gameplay to make a great game. In our retrospect review this week, we have the incredible Wrath of Earth by Addix Software Development, a 1995 first-person adventure and shooter game for MS-DOS. After Doom came out, there were thousands of Doom wannabes on the market, but they rarely offered anything different than cheap knockoffs or, at best, a similar experience to the original. Occasionally, though, there was a gem hidden amongst them that really made a difference. Wrath of Earth is one such gem, and it shows from the very beginning. You control a fighter inside a special robotic armor, taking on various missions. You control every aspect of the suit, and you're equipped with high-tech weapons and reconnaissance systems. In contrast with other games, your character starts armed to the teeth with every available weapon, and you get to use them all as long as you have ammo or energy. Speaking of energy, good management and refill of your energy resources is essential to your survival, and there is even a safe mode of low power consumption to help you survive long enough to recover from a nasty battle outcome. The game is presented with wonderful graphics that are very detailed. The custom engine used by the game performs exemplarily, and it's controlled by a combination of mouse and keyboard that won't give veterans of the genre any trouble. The music is great and has a feeling of agony and urgency, with the excellent sound effects complementing it. Your suit's user interface takes a little while to get used to, but it's nothing too complicated, and you'll soon get the hang of it. The rankings now, and the graphics get a 9.2. The controls an 8.9. The music and sound effects a 9.1. And the gameplay a 9.3, for a total of 9.1. Do not mistake this game for a cheap Doom clone. This is a game with great depth to the gameplay and amazing action that, if you didn't get the chance to enjoy back in the day, you need to play it right now. We have a special treat for you this week at Retro Adventures. This is the Inanimate Mr.Coatrack by Powerhoof, a hilarious and atmospheric adventure game that will definitely make an impression on you. The game was originally made for Adventure Jam 2019, and it's an amazing effort that shows why the adventure game genre is practically immortal. You play Dr. Victor Bernhardt, a definite pun on Victor Frankenstein, and maybe Bernard from the Maniac Mansion series of games, and you've just managed to bring a corpse back to life, but with unprecedented results. We won't give away any more of the story, as it's really hilarious and entertaining, and you should experience it for yourselves. The game is filled with humor, and here in our channel we are of the opinion that it even reaches great heights of the likes of the Monkey Island series in jokes and craziness. The game is fully voiced by some really talented people, and their voices really make a huge difference and only add to the comedy of the game. The controls are simple point and click, accompanied by an easy-to-use inventory system. Everything is icon-driven and there is no text input whatsoever. The graphics are simply amazing, and on par with the various LucasArts adventure games of the early 90s. Needless to say, the animation is on par with the graphics as well. The music compositions are great, quirky, and complement the game perfectly. The puzzles are very good, and in the spirit of the whole game's wackiness. On to the rankings, and the graphics receive a 9.4. The controls a 9.3. The music and sound effects a 9.6. And the gameplay a 9.2. For a total of 9.4 and the title of the Game of the Week. If you love Monkey Island, Space Quest, or any other adventure comedy game of the 90s, this is the game for you. This is comedy masterpiece, wrapped in a perfect adventure game blend.
They're giving you the promotion. Now what is it, Bernhardt, you worthless excuse? For God's sake, spit it out. Well, God, you're idiotic. Stop.
Our retro adventure game Retrospect today brings you the unique and often overlooked treasure that was Infogrames' Shadow of the Comet, a 1993 adventure horror game. The game came out in two versions, one floppy disk based without speech and only keyboard controls, and one for CD-ROM with full speech and mouse controls now enabled. The controls are mostly the issue most people had when this adventure game came out back in 1993, as the keyboard-based system was a bit complicated and unusual by the standards of those days. So we definitely suggest you play the CD-ROM based version, lest you misjudge an otherwise great game. The game's story is based on the Shadow over Innsmouth story by the great H.P. Lovecraft, and it does the prototype more justice than many movies did before and after it. Your character, a British photographer named John Parker, arrives to the small town of Innsmouth back in 1910 in order to solve the mystery of the mental collapse of another person named Lord Boleskine back in 1834, and find its connection to the Halley's Comet passing that is about to take place in 3 days, if you survive that long. The game is a gothic horror adventure game with truly unique and spectacular graphics for its day.
There's probably nothing I can tell you
The
that
first
you
thing
don't
to
already
notice
know.
about them
You're wrong,
is that
Mr.
many of
Parker.
the close-ups
I may
of
know
the
your
characters
name
you're
and profession.
interacting with bear a huge resemblance to famous actors such as Jack Nicholson, Vincent Price, Glenn Shaddix, and many others. It is but a small touch, but it makes all the difference in the atmosphere. The voiceovers are incredible and of the highest quality. The music and sound effects are airy and atmospheric and contribute immensely to the game's story. The game is a bit hard, as the puzzles take a bit more effort than usual to solve. Sometimes death lurks in every corner, but this is an experience worth living. The rankings of the game are: graphics 9.5, controls 6, music and sound effects 9.3, and gameplay 9, for a total of 8.45. Shadow of the Comet is a classic horror adventure game that is one of a kind. Back in the day, it was brought down by the awkward user interface, but please don't let that stop you from enjoying a truly great adventure. Come on, people, do the math. If that phrase speaks to you, then you know today's subject. The last hope, last hurrah, and last gasp of the Atari Corporation, the Atari Jaguar. Back in 1991, the video games market was a very competitive area. Sega Genesis was the absolute ruler. Super NES was soon to be released and challenged its dominance, even though Nintendo was already first in income profits thanks to the continued sales of the original NES. In Japan, NEC was ruling the market with the immensely successful PC Engine, even though the US market invasion was a total fluke. On the home computer front, the 8-bit computers was now considered an obsolete option, with various budget packages offered as a cheap solution for younger kids, even though Commodore 64 was still a moderate success. The home computer market was now dominated by two companies: Commodore, with the surprise success of the Amiga 500, and Atari, with the Atari ST-STE series of computers a distant second. You see, in the past 6 years, it would seem that every time Atari climbed to the top, someone was also getting there from another side and kicked her off. The Atari ST was admittedly the first successful 16-bit computer to come out, but not the first 16-bit computer ever. That honor goes to the T99-4 back in 1979. And just as it was about to dominate the market, Commodore Amiga came and took the lead. Similarly, after the video game market crash of 1983, Atari already had a new generation console ready to jump back on the horse and lead the way once again, in the face of the Atari 7800. But the reorganization of the company and the eventual sale of the computer and console division from Warner to Jack Tramiel led to a huge delay, and when the console was finally released, the NES was already the absolute ruler. Same tragedy in the handheld market. The Atari Lynx was the first color LCD portable console ever, and a far more advanced system than the Game Boy ever was. Plus, the color handheld market had no one else besides Atari to compete to. Well, that was the case for a year or so, when Sega released the much more successful Game Gear, boosted by Sega's arcade library that outsold the Lynx at a ratio of 5-to-1. But this time, Jack and the Atari company had a new plan. They would push the technology to the limit and throw a curveball to the market so powerful that it would take ages for the competition to surpass. The Atari Jaguar, the company's last resort, was designed right from the beginning as a 16-4-bit console. Of course, a single cheap 64-bit processor back in the day would have catapulted the manufacturing costs for Atari, that was already facing serious financial troubles. Instead, the system was designed with a different philosophy. One chip included the Motorola 68000 as a manager processor at 13.29 MHz. Then there were Tom and Jerry, two 32-bit RISC processors, with Tom being the GPU at 26.59 MHz and Jerry the DSP also at 26.59. The system was complemented by a 64-bit bleeder chip, a 64-bit object processor, and a 64-bit bus binding all the previous together. Included was 2 MB RAM, CD quality sound chipset, and ROM cartridges support up to 6 MB. And yes, the RISC processor working in conjunction together is considered a 64-bit machine. With the exclusion of the cartridges, it is obvious that the Jaguar was a behemoth of a console for the time. But hold on to the whole cartridge thing because we'll get back to it later. There was nothing like it on the market back in early 1993. That was the intended release for Jaguar. The PlayStation wasn't even a rumor, and Sega's 32X and CD combination had proven already a catastrophe. Also, the various offerings from other companies, like 3DO, seemed to have missed the market's goals by a landslide. All was set for Atari to dominate the video games market once more. Atari started an aggressive advertising campaign in the spirit of those years, when companies were at each other's throats all the time. You know, Sega does what Nintendo don't. The focus of the commercials was, of course, the immense 64-bit power of the Jaguar and the 3D capabilities of the system. The initial suggested price of $150 was also a major point of excitement for the potential buyers. And then days passed and became months, and we've reached the end of 1993. The nationwide launch was postponed for a test market limited launch that would only lead to 17,000 Jaguar consoles to be sold. To make matters worse, the promised $150 price has changed by now into a $249.95 price, a whopping $100 increase. The Jaguar was finally launched nationwide in the US in May 1994. There was some support from prolific developers, such as Jeff Minder with the immensely popular Tempest 2000, a remake of Dave Thorer's 80s arcade. One of the early hits also that made a huge impression was, of course, Aliens vs. Predator, that really showed what the system was capable of. There was also some good news for Atari, as the immediate rival on the home computer market, Commodore, had its hand on the console's area as well, and even though CD32 was a promising machine, because of the company's financial woes, it eventually crashed and burned, dragging the entire company along with it. This was indeed the time for Atari to reclaim the crown. But it did not go down that way. By mid-1994, both Sega and Sony had announced their own 5th generation consoles, Sega Saturn and of course the Sony PlayStation, that even though they were 32-bit machines, they used newer and more advanced technologies, especially in the rising 3D section, that made the Jaguar seem obsolete. To make matters worse, both Atari rivals embraced the new storage format, CD-ROM, providing their consoles with a huge 650 megabyte storage space for game developers, and making the cartridge format of the Jaguar seem like a thing of the past. The game library of the Jaguar also was facing troubles, with limited numbers of software released after the early successes, and many games promised were postponed indefinitely, as the developers were reconsidering their support given the competition's upcoming offerings. Atari was not about to go down without a fight though, as this was a make-or-break situation for the company. A CD-ROM add-on was announced, along with a Pro controller, that was made to rectify some of the complaints about the admittedly weird Jaguar original controller. But by 1995 things were not looking up at all. The CD-ROM add-on for the Jaguar was released on September 21 of 1995, an entire year later than intended, and both the awkward design, making it a lasting joke because of the resemblance to a toilet seat, and the limited support did not help it take off. Software that was supposed to come out for the Jaguar kept on getting cancelled or transferred to the competition, as Sega had already launched the Sega Saturn and the PlayStation launched soon afterwards, shifting the industry to a whole new direction, with Sony as the main leader. Only Nintendo was still holding on to the previous generation with the SNES though, outselling the Jaguar by a huge margin. Things were so bad for Atari that Sam Tramiel, son of Jack and then CEO of Atari, had a heart attack, forcing Jack to come back to finish the job. Jack was a man capable of facing the harsh truths, and soon Atari was reverse merged with JTS, Jaguar discontinued along with its peripherals, with a huge amount of unsold stock of consoles being sold to Tiger Software on late 1996. The dream was over. It's worth mentioning that before catastrophe hit the company, Atari was already in the works for an Atari Jaguar 2, with some mock-ups and early prototypes released to the press. There was even an early design for a Jaguar VR helmet. Sadly, none of them came to pass. Today, Jaguar enjoys healthy support by the homebrew and indie community, and is considered a beloved collector's and retro gamer's item. It remains, though, as a testament to the fact that more raw power does not guarantee an easy victory. Not in the video games arena, at least.